We're thinking about transitions today, transitions at all different stages in life and at all different sizes. This was originally recorded for some university students who are working on their grad cert in special education. So I'm hoping that the information here will be useful to many other people as well. So transitions, they can be big, they can be small. It can be as small as moving from one area of the classroom to another. It could be moving from one classroom to another. It could be from moving from one school to another. For me personally, it was moving from one country to another, but those transitions are all potentially really difficult. And the important thing here is that knowledge is power. The more information we have, the more information we can share, the easier the transition becomes. So why is it hard? Well, there's so many unknowns. People don't like change, and people on the autistic spectrum dislike change usually even more. We're going to meet new people. We might not be with people we've always been with. The routines are going to change. Well, some of it will, some of it won't. How do we know? Different sensory things. So within a school, like, different buildings smell different. Different buildings sound different. And that can be really daunting for some students. For some students, just even the change of uniform can be difficult. The social part of school and transitions. Who am I going to be with? How do I have to behave in these different places? And obviously that hidden curriculum. Particularly students going to high school, for example, different teachers have different hidden rules about how they expect children to behave in their classrooms and behave in different areas of the school. And that's not always explicitly taught or explicitly explained. So the first transition that most children make is into Kindy, and sadly often children are undiagnosed with autism spectrum disorder at this point. So often that transition is just like it is for every other kid. They go for a morning, they go for a bit of a day, they go for a couple of days, and then eventually they work up to potentially full time. But the things I'm going to talk about transition into prep will also be useful for transition into Kindy. So into school. As soon as possible, as soon as you know that you have a student with a disability, particularly autism spectrum disorder, coming into your school, then that's when you start the process of transition. Ideally for me, I like to do it 2 terms before. So if they're coming for the beginning of the school year, I like to start that transition process at the beginning of term 3. And that involves collecting information. So do we have the diagnosis paperwork? If not, we've got time to get that before school starts. Are there any reports we need to read? Are there any things we need to put into place in school already? It's useful to meet the parents as well early on and actually sit down with them and talk about what you can offer, what you can't, what's doable, what's not, what needs to be done. People always ask me, do you give the parents your number? Well, selectively, yes, there are a few student parents who have my number. However, I've learnt from a ranting phone call on a Saturday afternoon that was completely irrelevant to the kids' problem, that make sure you have their number on your phone so you can screen the calls if it's not an appropriate time to talk. In those early days, you need to think about potential problems. So I had a student who in Kindy didn't wear socks, so we had to make sure we addressed that before we went to school. I've had students who don't like eating near other students, and we could address that before we went to school. It's always great if you can meet the child in their natural habitat. That is, back in their Kindy classrooms. Go and visit them where they are being themselves. That's really, really useful to see how they cope in an environment they're comfortable in. And when you do those transition days, do they do the normal transition day with everyone else? Or would it be better for them to do something personalised? Now, for some students, they are fine to come in with everyone else and do the same transition as everyone else. And for others, they would be much better coming in and having a personalised couple of visits. And from those visits, you may define that you need to do some extra visits to school. It's really great if you can identify the classroom and the teacher early on, so we know where they're going to go. Apologies for the school bell. And also thinking about what we can do before the term becomes crazy. So before we get to Christmas week, because trying to do transition between children in different classes in the last 2 weeks of term is not the best time, because it's not the normal classroom routine by then. When you're also thinking about transitioning to school, will they be going to after school care? Do we need to transition them there? Uniform. Now this can be a big one, and second-hand uniform often is best because it's well washed, well used, it's not crinkly, it's not uncomfortable in the same way, and often you want to get that uniform early and practice wearing it. Wear it for 10 minutes, wear it for 20 minutes, wear it for a morning, wear it for your transition visit. I always write personalised transition books for students so that they can see what their classrooms will look like, who their teachers look like. It's something for them to refer back to during the school holidays. Often I send home a paper copy, and I usually make it on PowerPoint, so I can send it home as a PowerPoint so they can flick through on their iPad as well. Some parents like to write an information page about their child to give to the school as information about what's going on, what works, what they need to know about their child, their particular interests, their particular needs. And it may be you need to give staff professional development for the staff, because they may not have had a student with this particular disability before. So it's really important that they have the information they need. And there's a number of courses available here in Queensland. Autism Queensland provide amazing support and PD. There are some online resources through Positive Partnerships, which I can also recommend too. So what do we do the week before school starts? So for us here in Queensland, that's usually late January. I usually invite the students in the student-free week, where there's teachers but no students, to come on site and just have a look around their classrooms. Maybe meet their teachers if they're here, go into the new classroom, have an explore, play out on the playground, go and visit other key classrooms in the area, hopefully to meet some key staff. But actually it's more important that the key staff meet the child, so that the key staff go, oh yes, that's the child that I remember came for that extra visit. I may need to handle this situation slightly differently. And using toilets can be really smelly, scary places, for some students. So it's good to do that while there is no one else around. So it's really good just to go and explore whether they use them or not. It's not important, but it is important to go and actually visit the toilets when it's quiet and not so smelly, hopefully. So once students are at school, do they arrive later? Do they leave earlier? What's best for that child? And that will be a personalised one. Do they need an extended drop-off? For one of my students, we had an extended drop-off until the child said, I'm good now for you to go, mum. And to start with, that was 10 o'clock. And over time, that came back to, just after the bell went and the child was happy. But that's really important to get what the child needs. It's all about what the child needs, not what the rules necessarily are, that all parents leave when the bell goes. If that's not okay for this child, then make them feel comfortable. That's really important. Visual timetables are really good so the child can see what's happening. I don't know if you've ever been on a day where you have no idea what the plan is for the day, so you're not sure, like, when's lunch, when's morning tea, when can I go to the bathroom. It's really good for us to know those things, and the same for the students. On the playground, they will find that difficult sometimes to engage with other students, particularly if they don't know them. So put out an activity they like. So if they like Lego, put out Lego. If they like drawing, put out drawing. And then other students will come to them, which is a much easier way of developing those friendships. Always make sure that there's a staff member available for that child on the first day and beyond. So there's somebody there first time. And one important thing is that I always make sure I call or I message that parent by around morning tea to say, everything is fine, please relax, because that first day of school for them is really stressful. They've been building up to this for ages. Will everything work out? Will their child be okay? Will they be looked after? And just being given that reassurance really, really helps. So in the first few weeks of school, don't assume that they'll be okay transitioning into school each morning. Just have somebody available. They may only be there to say good morning, hang the bag up, help them have a quick chat and move on. But don't assume that things will be okay, particularly after weekends or breaks in the routine. They may need support for specialist lessons, because that's extra transitions to new people, new rooms maybe, and they may need that for maybe if they go for specialist music or specialist PE. Many students in the early years often have a shorter day. They come in late, they go home early. That's fine. I had one student who just stayed till morning tea for the first few weeks because that was enough. And then we worked towards staying till lunch, and then we worked towards staying the whole day. Prep is around getting children ready for school, and if that's what they need to do, that's good. Visual timetables are great, just helping them plan out their day, particularly first, next, and then charts. So first we're going to do this, next we're going to do that, and then we're going to do that. And somewhere in those charts needs to be something they prefer to do. So first you're going to do this, which may not be a preferred task, and then move on to the next thing, which might be something they really like to do. If you can go through the plan for tomorrow before home time, that's great, just to give them a heads up of what's going to happen. For most children that helps. For a few children, don't tell them, they don't need to know, because they will just worry about it all night. Let them know first thing in the morning, you've got a relief teacher today, if they're one that's going to worry all night about it. Talk to parents daily about what's going on at home. So that's always an indication of how they're coping at school. So if they're going home and having huge meltdowns, we need to know at school because we need to stop that happening. The parent needs to be able to contact you if they're running late. The child's had a meltdown before school. They didn't sleep. Those things really help us go through our day as school teachers and to make sure we make those accommodations for the child in the classroom, but also in reverse to us at school to be able to let parents know if something else is going on. It's good in the first few weeks to contact any specialist working with the student. They may be able to come do some visits in school to give you that extra information to really make the transition to school successful. We usually do an IEP after 2 to 3 weeks with a short review. We make some short-term goals and see how we go, maybe have a review as soon as term 2. Building friendship is really important. As I said, making playground activities where the student will come to them, but also thinking about how you move groups around within the classroom so they get to meet different students. If there is an incident, and these happen in schools, they will happen, it's best that the person who has the best relationship with the child deals with the problem. So you may have an incident, but calling the principal or the administration, they may not have any relationship with that child, and it's best that they take your class so you can work through what's happened and you don't have to relay the story to somebody else. Because by the time you've relayed the story to somebody else, you haven't been dealing with the problem where you could have been getting on hands down. So, and it may be that you've been working with it for a while and you need somebody different to come and tag team to take over. So if you do that, then it needs to be somebody who has a relationship with the child who can do that. So it's important that the child gets to have a relationship with a few different people for those times that will happen. So another thing I do in the first few weeks is just observe and problem solve. What do you think the student's thinking? A few years ago, I had a student who would throw a ball at another student as they walked past. Well, that was interpreted by the other student as aggressive, which without thinking it through was, but the actual child who was throwing the ball didn't have the language to say, can we play ball together? So just looking at what's going on and problem solving, what was that student thinking? And once we did that, we could teach the child to say, can we play? And that everything for that little issue was resolved. Social stories are really good, particularly in those first few weeks of prep, what to do and when to do it, how to sit on the mat, how to work at your desk, how to put your bag up when you come into school in the morning. In Queensland, Autism Queensland have a great helpline which you can call for advice, whether you're an experienced person or a less experienced person, you're a parent, a teacher, a support person, and you can just talk to them and say, okay, I've got this problem, what should I do? And often they go through things that you've already tried, or they'll go through things that you have tried but ages ago and you go, oh yeah, I could try that, and then they'll come up with new things as well that you haven't thought of. So I always find it's a really good sounding board to give them a call and say, I'm struggling with this, what else can I try? So transition within school. So some transitions in school are bigger than others. In my particular school, transition from year 3 to year 4 is huge. They move from one building to another. Most children from 6 to 7 is their really big transition as they go to high school. As with transition to prep, start early. And for students who are that bit older, you can talk to students and you can talk to the parents about their concerns and start to address what can we do to alleviate their concerns or put things into place to work around those concerns. They need to, like the preppies, go visit new classrooms, visit new playgrounds, meet new teachers. I find with the older students, they prefer to go visit new rooms when they're empty, rather than visiting rooms when there's lots of students in there who might be looking at them and wondering what they're doing there. If they can spend time with a new teacher, one-on-one for a short time, that's great. And if the new teacher can visit them in their natural habitat, back in their classrooms, that always helps as well, because they feel comfortable there. I really like it if we can meet the class with the new teacher in the new room before the school holidays. So this week in my school, we had a time where the students went to meet their new teacher in their new classroom, so they know who's in their class, they've met their teacher, and they know which room they're going to be in. And then the transition book I write from that would think about what's the same, what's different, and what don't we know yet. So there'll be lots and lots of things that actually are the same. We still do English, we still do maths. The tables and chairs might be exactly the same. So that's really good to know. And what's different, and also what don't we know yet? There'll be things we need to go find out, or things that just aren't known yet. Transitioning to high school, obviously again talk to parents about their concerns, organise visits for parents so they can come in, they know what's going on, so they can then reassure their child. Extra visits to classes, lockers, new rooms, new teachers, new admin areas, staff meeting the students, students meeting the staff, very similar to what we do in prep, but for older children we give them a lot more sort of control over what they want to do. Lots of extra teachers liaise. Ideally, I've got a student who currently is transitioning from 6 to 7. We've had meetings before he transitions into high school, and we'll have a meeting before he actually starts. Once we know who all those teachers are, who's going to be his English teacher, who's going to be his maths teacher, we don't know that yet, but once we know that, then we can have that transition meeting and put all those things into place and talk about what's on his IEP, what adjustments are needed. If you can do IEPs in term 4 with high school staff present, then you can write that IEP with goals and adjustments with a high school focus. If they're using inclusive tech, then that needs to be made sure that that can continue and that staff who are taking that student on know how to use that assistive tech, and that may need some training. Obviously, if they can meet some current Year 7 students and find out from them, what do we know, what do I want to know, and if you can buddy them up with somebody who's going to help them, that was great. So lockdowns, the new transition. Obviously that's an unexpected transition. Sometimes we've had a few where it's just like, we're not going to school tomorrow. For most of my students that's like, yay. But for one of my students in the last lockdown, when it came to school Friday, lockdown started Saturday, had a terrible week, just couldn't cope with the fact that he had no time to plan. When we had our big lockdown here in Queensland over a year ago, we knew it was coming. We prepared the students, we talked about it, we talked about what was going to happen. So if we can give students some information about what will happen during a lockdown ahead of time, that will really help. Obviously, it's a new transition, we don't know when it's coming. Transitioning to new schools, that doesn't always happen, it doesn't always happen well. I always get permission from the parent to share any information the new school needs. So if they need a copy of their funding application so they can write that theirs more easily, if their parents are happy for me to pass it on, I will pass on everything I've got just to make the life easier. It's great if they can go for visits to the new school, and again, if you can allow the new school to come and visit them at the school they're currently at, where they're comfortable in their natural habitat, that would be great too. So obviously there are transitions then beyond school, into university, into TAFE, into work, and there are organisations that can help with this. Contact Centrelink, they're sort of a good place, and some students are supported by NDIS to transition out of school and into the adult workplace or whatever is appropriate for them. So key takeaways: prepare early, communicate with all parties. So as they get older, you will communicate with the students too. Use visuals, use routines, that helps them feel safe, helps them feel comfortable, and really, really importantly, make sure you build friendships. Everybody wants to feel that they belong, and that's really, really vital part of being successful and happy at school. So if you'd like some more information, there's my link to my website and link to my email address and my Facebook and LinkedIn pages. I hope this has been helpful.